Looks like it started successfully.
All right, great. Let's get started. All right. Let's see. Mike is here. I guess let's do a call for open, see what's going on.
So, quick, semi-unrelated, but the patches that I mentioned last week are now up on the mailing list.
These are the Raspberry Pi patches?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Anybody have opens? Okay. Well, I have one open. I did work on the GitHub workflow for building EDK2-platforms. And I have that working for the ext4 package, and hopefully here in a moment for the USB 3 debug feature package. I think those are still in need of some more changes to pass all the CI, but the workflow file is there. I'm happy to share it. It's still on the same spot, same repository and branch as described in the GitHub discussion for this. I know that Marvin and a few others are interested. I'm not sure if anyone in this group is, but that's there. And I guess, Mike, as I reviewed last week's meeting to take a few notes, I think you were going to talk with the stewards this last week to see about ownership of the repo and putting in place contribution process that involved PR checks and things.
Right. So I did not quite get to that, but I did get some update on the platform support within that repository, and I'll let I'll get Isaac cover his area here in a second. But I talked to Leif about the ARM platforms, and the ones that are deemed currently unmaintained is the 96 boards area, AMD Seattle, Display Link, and Scion Next platforms in silicon. And the ones that are considered at risk, meaning that I don't think there's clear maintainership for, is the high silicon, the Marvel platforms in silicon, the NXP platforms in silicon, the Raspberry Pi platforms in silicon, and potentially BeagleBoard unless somebody wants to pick it up. In addition, within the ARM platforms, the ARM vExpress, specifically CTA 15-A7 is also one that can likely be removed. So it sounds like a pretty significant number of platforms can be removed almost immediately, and likely a PR suggesting that a number of other ones be removed unless somebody steps up to maintain them.
Okay, that sounds great.
Isaac, I don't know if you want to cover what you know about on the Intel platform side.
I still need to coordinate on the client side, but on the server side, we have two currently that I think we'd like to keep open. That's the Pearly and the Whitley. And so I've got to I've got to line up the maintainer for the Pearly, but I've talked to them previously about it. I just haven't added them to the maintainer list yet. And then I'll work on the client side to clean up as many of those as we can.
So what's on the remove list on the server side?
I'm not sure yet, so I don't want to overcommit on that. Just I'm working on it.
What about the Comcast stuff? I feel like that stuff hasn't been touched for a long time.
I'm sorry, which architecture is the Comcast content?
I believe it's ARM. I'm not entirely sure though.
See what directory that sits in.
You know, I don't see it anymore, actually.
There you go.
Let's see. Oh, Art removed it last year. Never mind.
Okay. So it sounds good, Mike.
Yeah, and as far as the PR process, I don't expect any pushback at all if we enable effectively the same PR process we have on the EDK2 repo, where a maintainer has to set the push label to commit a change.
Okay.
Is that what you were thinking as well, as far as no different process, right? Reuse the same one as far as the mechanism?
Yeah, I mean, I unless there's a good reason, or unless they wanted to go first with the code review stuff, I didn't see any reason to be any different. Yeah.
Okay. Let's just march ahead for assuming that as the process, and everyone can learn about it when the PR to enable it goes out.
Okay, so I think that that will rely on you then to do the Mergify stuff.
Yep.
And a bunch of the repository, settings and changes and stuff.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I will get this GitHub action in shape, and we'll take it from there. Yeah.
I think from a discussion with Isaac, what's the PR that you have working now with some of the two of the feature packages as a sample showing it working? How does it pull the EDK2 and EDK2 platforms into the CI agents build environment?
So EDK2-platforms is just pulled because it's the source repository. And then EDK2 itself is pulled through configuration listed in the CI settings file.
Sure. Okay. So it's pulled as a pure repo then, as far as just getting the CI agent to run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it will not, it's also locked in at the moment. I locked it to the stable tag that was created Friday. So it is not free floating. This is not a master type of thing. This would be locked. It can change if the repository owners would like it to, but I think one of our goals here was to have more consistency. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, that seems reasonable for now. Isaac, does that work for your platform use case?
I'm not sure I followed. So is there, Sean, do you have a new pull request update that moved the EDK repo out of inside the EDK2-platforms repo? Is that what I heard?
It just no, it's the same as it always was in that sample prototype. It's basically defined within that CI settings Python file, the commit hash and the repository location. And it's just, it'll extract it into a deps folder, deps/EDK2, and then it will set the package's path to that so that it can resolve everything as expected.
Okay, let me take a look at it. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the use case that I want to see is when something in EDK2 changes and breaks the EDK2 platforms targets, we get notified and can fix them, whether that's the submitter or the maintainer or the platform maintainer. That's what I see happening is there's a change made in EDK2 that breaks the EDK2 platform. So, I mean, I guess the cadence of updating the master isn't maybe critical, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Right, and that is a good point, Isaac. So I think when we've talked about this, we've talked about three possible styles of CI checks, and one of them is the master concept, where it's everything new on both sides being checked against each other. There's a change on EDK2 platforms, and use a stable, well-known or jumping at a periodically to a known good stable point on the EDK2 side for the latest changes against EDK2 platforms. And then the other one is that if there's a change to EDK2 repo, we want to check that against some of the current platforms, right? Or a stable point of the platforms. So, those are the three combinations that are potentially interesting. We'll have to see what we can get turned on as an automated fashion. So it's not clear to me on that last one, for example, is that a CI action that's kicked off from the EDK2 side because it's a change in the EDK2, where it's currently running against the EDK2 repo and OVMF in there. Do we want to expand the CI coverage of EDK2 to include some builds of EDK2 platforms as well to make sure that that EDK2 change doesn't break one of the platforms? I think that's the direction you're talking about, but that may be something we have to do on the EDK2 side because that's where the PR is being submitted.
I kind of agree with Isaac here. I like the master-master combination the most because I think it would be a good step forward to us being able to make stable tags not just on EDK2, but EDK2 platforms as well, right? Because if we're always testing against, last quarter's stable tag, then how do we ever get to a point where we can have a stable tag that's aligned with the newly released EDK2 stable tag if we're not constantly integrating, right? So,
Well, I think I think what Sean's proposing will work for all of this. It's just a matter of where you point it, because essentially you have to point to a get ref. That get ref can be the master branch. It could be a commit. It could be a git tag. So it doesn't really matter. It would be a matter of setting up different GitHub workflows in this case. One where the get ref is to a fixed location and time so that you have like fixed dependencies that actually track and things work whenever people pull down the code and use that fixed dependency. Then you could have another one that points to a master branch, and that would let you know that you're broken or working on the master branch. And then you could update your fixed dependency to be what the master branch was when you saw that it worked. And if you see the master branch fails, that means you need to go do some work, and then you can update the code, and then you can move your ref over to EDK2 where it should be, because you had to make the fix. So I think as long as you have like controlled dependencies, you can achieve all of the above, and you can do it in a structured way. You just have to have multiple workflows.
yeah, that makes sense. I guess there's just the one workflow where I want to update the ref as part of the build process because that's what's going to find breakages fastest. And I'd like to have them fixed quickly as opposed to just fester for a week like they sometimes do now, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess it's all depends on the policy that we want, right? Like Mike said, you could set it up in EDK2 and block EDK2. That you have to decide, do we want to block EDK2 changes because of platform breaks, or do we want a platform workflow to kick off and run against the latest EDK2 and just let the platform owners know, hey, there is something that's going to break you. So before you update your actual pointer to EDK2, go fix it and then update the pointer. So there's different ways. It all just depends on what policies we want to take, but it's certainly possible with
Yeah,
what's there.
I mean,
Oh,
like I think our
true.
current status though is the hierarchy is EDK2 has no commitment to making downstream repos continue to work, and since there's no control or quality requirements for EDK2 platforms, I think it's pretty premature to put gates on them. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm about the master, and then if we get sufficient usage of some platforms, then they can come back to EDK2 maintainers and whatnot with data and say, hey, listen, I'd like you guys to commit to making these work. They are maintained, they are active, they have consumers, people care. I'm not sure I can make that argument about our open platforms right now.
Yeah, I think that's why I was kind of hinting towards that we don't that we don't do it in EDK2, and instead we have a workflow in EDK2 platforms that just lets the maintainers know that they're broken and they need to make a change to move up to the latest EDK2.
Yeah, that's fair for now. It's just I would like those notifications to come relatively quickly, so we can act quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can make the trigger be a merge into EDK2 masters, so they'll come basically instantly after it happens.
Yeah, that
Right.
sounds good.
Yeah, I guess one's a blocking change, the other one's a non-blocking change, right? It's a check. It's you could obviously want the current a change to EDK2 platforms against the last known good EDK2 SHA, and you can't let the EDK2 platform change in unless it passes against that. And then you can also run the check against EDK2 master, and if that fails, it's informative. And that tells you have more work to do on your platform side to be able to move to a new tag on EDK2 on the EDK2 repository or a new SHA.
And conversely, if it passes, then we update the EDK2 ref we point to.
Yeah.
Yes.
As part
And
of the process, right?
And I think that could be automated even if we wanted to.
Yeah, I kind of want it to be, because otherwise we're just not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, so if there's an option to not automate some, I might choose that for some, because they're kind of canaries in the coal mine for is anybody actually using this. For example, when one's been broken for 6 months, that gives me a pretty clear indication that nobody cares. So I don't know, but that's
why getting the maintained platforms identified and only the maintained ones active, because we can't let things sit, right? If we're going to do this and turn on CI and try to keep moving everything forward at the fastest rate possible, we need commitment from all the platform owners that are active to fix issues if something happens on the EDK2 side that breaks their platform. So are we going to be able to have maybe some feedback in the next week, Isaac, on the Intel platforms for what's going to be supported at that level of maintainership?
Yeah, should be able to.
Okay. I mean, I think we know server, right, Isaac? It's in client. I guess we have KB, Whiskey, and Tiger, right? Is there any other client ones?
I mean, let's not go into it here. Let's go offline. But I mean, there's the Quark and there's the Valley View 2.
Yeah.
There's the Symix that doesn't work and doesn't have active maintainers. So, I mean, the whole scope, there's a number we can delete for sure. And then a number that are going to be a little harder to decide because they have some useful purpose, but I think they're probably not active enough. If we're going towards the requirements Mike Kenny was saying of, actively maintained and used, I think we can be a little more aggressive about pruning them. We can put them on an archive branch somewhere and they can still be available for people to look at if they want to see that, or in the history or whatever. We can just capture it and say, if you want to see work, go here. Something like that.
Yeah, fair. We can talk later.
I think another valuable outcome of this is it would be nice to have the data of when platforms are broken by EDK2 changes recorded somewhere, because that can serve as early integration data whenever the stable tag comes of the changes that broke platforms that went in to the stable tag during that time.
So do you mean like just the package verification of the min platform packages, or do you mean full platform builds?
Oh, I mean like a change in EDK2 broke the platform's build, whereas that was the only thing that changed and the platform build stayed the same. So that would be like someone adding a library class and right, it wasn't in the platform DSC, or they moved an API that the platform was using. It would just be kind of good to have that level of data just for the first time to have that recorded publicly, that there's someone consuming the core code and they were working before this change went in and now they don't.
Yeah, I think there's two consumers, Mike Kenny. I think there's one set of consumers for the maintainers in EDK2, since most changes are supposed to be compatible. It's a pretty good warning flag that there's something in the review and or compatibility process if you broke a bunch of downstream people. And also I'll comment that personally, mostly it seems to be the library include files that aren't getting used. Or people have creative interpretations of how the library include files should be used. But I think the maintainers are one constituency, and then the actual product builders, they don't typically stay on the master and get broken on a daily basis. They typically will look to move forward, and so to Rocky's point, being able to see the list of breaks are the things that you're going to have to fix on your platform. So if that's new and available information, that's very useful for a lot of downstream consumers, I would suspect.
And,
Yeah, I think-
and to be fair in practice, at least as far as I remember, Isaac, for the last 2 or 3 years, all of our EDK2 integration fixes were we were able to completely fix them in Min platform package and have everything dependent on Min platform package work without actually needing any changes to the individual boards. So I don't know. It seems like we did a good job with the Min platform architecture.
Generally that works okay. What I was, kind of being snarky about is there's things like MDE package.dsc.inc or MDE package libs or network package libs where people don't add the new libs to them. So
Yeah, and then it breaks everything unnecessarily. Agreed.
well, it could have avoided breaking people.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sounds like we got some next steps, Mike, and we can keep that going. Are there other opens?
We had a discussion, I think, last week about base tools, maintainership, and Christine and I talked offline about that, and it looks like we've got some support there that will continue or increase. So I think we're going to be okay there. They obviously have to be more actively engaged in the EDK2 base tools repository for the generation of the PIT modules, and so that's going to be part of that activity. I think that is it Joey? Is that the right name, Sean? Who's also, I think, from the Microsoft side, willing to help out on some of the base tools elements.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of the Pi tools work, so I think a lot of it translates, and we've tried to keep things similar. So yes.
Okay, so that's good to know as well, as far as just a resource we can reach out to if we have questions about more of the, I think, of the infrastructure and PIP generation and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see any of the PRs closed that we talked about last week. It'd be great to get those moving, but sounds good. Like you guys have at least talked and have a plan.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Well, I guess if nothing else, then we're good for today. Next week, just for those who, a reminder, I think daylight savings time comes to the U.S. Or goes away. I don't know what it is. I forget. But we'll be moving an hour forward. So if that adjusts your clock, please make sure to account for that. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.